I'm Amy from Peekaboo Pattern Shop. Today I'm going to show you how to sew the Doodlebug romper. This is a really cute pattern for babies and toddlers. It's got a lap neckline, which makes it really easy to get on and off. You can actually dress your child right through the neckline, which is perfect for really wiggly babies that you don't want to mess with snaps. Or it also has the snap inseam option, which is what we're going to learn how to sew today for easy diaper changes. We're also going to go over how to sew a gusset, which is this little piece of fabric right here that allows extra room for diapers and just helps the romper to fit better. I have my pieces all cut out and ready to sew for the Doodlebug romper. One thing that I like to do is, since the neckband pieces are so similar, is to get those grouped up with the right piece right at the beginning. So I've got my front neckband and my front romper set together. So I have those ready to sew, and the back neckband with the back romper. I've got my two sleeve pieces, and then I've got my gusset right here. And this gusset gives more room for diapers, and it just helps the romper fit a lot better. And then I'm going to do the snap inseam option. So I've already got my pieces ready to go. So this is the front snap facing. I added the interfacing to the back side and serged around the outside edge. And then for the back of the romper, you're going to have a placket. So you have two pieces for that side. So I put interfacing on the wrong side of one of those pieces and then sewed them together. And I like to do this with my sewing machine instead of my serger. I think it's a little less bulky. So I sewed them together and then trimmed around the edge with pinking shears and clipped the corners. So this is ready to be turned right side out and pressed flat now. And after you press it flat, you can top stitch around the edge if you want to. You really don't have to, because by the time you put the snaps in there, it's going to hold all those layers together really well anyway. So here's the back snap placket. That's all ready to go, and our front snap facing. So now we're going to start sewing this together. We're going to start with attaching the gusset to the back of the romper. So here's our back romper piece. The gusset has little notches on it so that you know where the center is. And the only part of the gusset that I pin into place is the very center. And the rest of it, I like to just line up as I sew. So I'm going to pin the center, and these pieces do not look like they're going to fit together, but they will. You just got to work at it a little bit. So you're going to curve the gusset around like this to meet up with the edge of the romper inseam. So I'm going to bring this over to the sewing machine. I always use my sewing machine for this step, and then after I have it sewn on and I can make sure I don't catch part of the fabric in a little pleat or something, or miss a section, once I have it all right, then I like to go over it with my serger. So I'm going to bring this over to the sewing machine and show you how I do that. So I'm ready to sew my gusset onto the back of the romper. I find this is actually easiest to do with the gusset down, so I'm looking at my back romper piece instead. So I flip it over, I get everything lined up, and then I'm going to sew this together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance and just adjusting things as I go. So once I get to the center of the gusset, I like to stop and reposition my pieces to make sure I have everything lined up to go down the other side of the inseam. Okay, so I now have the gusset attached to the romper. So it should look like this when you're done. You could now either go over it with your serger, or if you're only planning to use your sewing machine, I would go over this seam one more time with a long, narrow zigzag stitch just to reinforce it, because this is part of the romper that's going to get a lot of stress put on it. And you'd also want to use matching thread. You can see my white threads peeking through there a little bit. I just finished sewing my romper neckline and sleeves and side seams. If that's something that you need a little extra help with, I have another video on my channel for how to sew an envelope neckline, which is this style with the overlapping shoulders. So if you need a little help with that, you can find that on my channel. We're gonna go ahead and move on to our inseam. So if you're doing the basic inseam without the snaps, let me show you how that's gonna get pinned together. So we have, here's the front of our romper, this is the back, and here's our gusset. So I like to start with the gusset. Remember, we have a notch right here to mark the center of the gusset, so we're going to match that up with the center of our front inseam. Match that up, then we can match up our ends. So we've got our ends matched up. And then you're just going to keep pinning all along this inseam. And when you get to where the gusset is, just make a little fold right there. You're just going to fold right over that seam. I normally press the seam allowance towards the hem instead of folding it up this way. I find it lays best if I do it like that. And then you'll just do the same thing for the other side. And then you're just going to sew all along that inseam. And then all you have left to do is hem the legs. Since I'm doing the snaps, what I'm going to do is sew the front snap facing on first. So you'll be working with your romper right side out. And you're going to fold the hem up 3/4 of an inch towards the right side of your fabric. So we're going to do that on both sides, and then you'll lay the front snap facing on top of that. So the bottom edge of your facing is going to meet right up with that fold. And then you'll just sew together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance right along this curve. And if you're not very comfortable using your serger, this is kind of a tight curve right here, you might want to just do this step on your sewing machine instead. It's not going to show on the inside of your garment at all, and you don't want to accidentally cut into your inseam with your serger knife. So I'm going to go sew right along here. I finished serging my front facing onto the front romper inseam, and I've turned it to the inside of my garment. And then you'll want to press it flat. So you can see the hem is now folded up, so wrong sides are together, and the snap facing is in between your romper and your hem, so it's tucked in there nice and neat. So I'm going to top stitch this now. I like to sew right along the edge and then a second line along the edge of the facing, so about 1/2 inch from the inseam edge, and then you'll put your snaps right in between those two lines of stitching. I'm ready to attach my back snap placket to the back inseam of my romper. So the first thing that I do is find the notch in my gusset, which is right here, and line that up with the center of the placket. So that's going to go right sides together. Now the ends of your placket need to end 3/4 inches above the hemline. So we're gonna put that right here, and then you fold the hemline up over the placket. And pin that in place. So we're gonna do that on both sides. And now, this is not gonna look like it's gonna fit very well, but it will fit. You just need to convince it a little bit. So I like to turn it like this, and then line up the gusset with the snap placket. You're gonna have a seam right here. Just fold that down towards the hem. That's the seam from your gusset. And if you're having a hard time getting these to fit, what you can do is just make some little tiny, like 1/8 of an inch snips into the edge of your placket, and that'll help it ease into place. So we're gonna do that same thing down the other side of the inseam, and then sew it together. And this is another part of the romper that I like to use my sewing machine first and then go over it with the serger, just to make sure that I have everything in place correctly. So here's the gusset, back of the romper, snap placket. I have the hem folded over the end of the back snap placket. I just finished this with a serger, and now the last thing I'm going to do is turn it right side out and just top stitch the seam allowance to the romper right along this edge. I just finished hemming my romper and I added the snaps. So now my romper is finished. Show you how these snaps go in. So here's my hemmed romper leg. And then you're gonna add your snaps. I like to add them to the front of the romper first. So here's my front inseam. I've got 2 snaps on the bottom, and then you're gonna want your snaps about 2 inches apart. The pattern has little markings on it to show you where to put your snaps, so you can use that as a guide. You'll see either little dots or stars or circles depending on what size you're doing, and that marks where to put your snaps. I don't like to put a snap in the very middle of the inseam because it tends to just pop open all the time, so instead I do 2 on either side. So here's my snaps on the front. I use the socket side of the snap for the front of the romper. And then on the back of the romper, you'll put the other side of your snap. So when it closes, it's gonna go like this. So your snaps only go into the snap placket, and then it snaps shut like this. So here's the inside of your leg. You can see how those two come together like that. And I get a lot of questions about what snaps I use. I really prefer these metal open ring snaps compared to the plastic cam snaps. I just find these are a lot less bulky. So I get mine from Snap Source. Joann's also carries some. There's some Drit snaps that are similar to this. And so the snaps have these pronged rings, and that goes on both sides of the snap. And then you have your stud and your socket. So here's the little stud. These are the sockets. And you can get these in a whole bunch of colors. This is the random color pack, but that'll just show you a few of the different colors they have. You can get them just plain metal too, so that's what I use a lot of the times. And then I just have black and white, and then I just got this random color pack for the rest of my projects, and that's worked out really well for me. And SnapSource has a little tool you can buy on their website to set them. I use this pair of pliers. I got them at the thrift store. I have no idea how old they are, but they work really well. I normally use these size 15 snaps for baby clothes. I find they work out really well.